and I think that England will probably exploit that area, and that's why I do expect them to potentially score. While we've just been live, I wanted to bring something up regarding the title of this podcast, which is going to be Ray is quitting FPL. And I've just thought, right, I'm going to go onto FPL and deliberately read you out the statement that's on the site, which is, we're making updates to the site, and the usual thing. But no, I actually was able to get into the game itself, and I'm actually in it right now. The game hasn't launched, but I generally thought that, oh my fucking god, the game has launched. This is fucking amazing. And then it's not. It's just the same old website. Say that again?
Yeah. Just laughing. There you go. You get excitement. That's the first reflex, which is understandable.
Well, this is the thing, you see. So let's just get into it, really. So you said about the fact that you're writing notes. I don't know why you're writing notes, Ray, because you don't need notes, but whatever. For me, you telling me, you told me this, I couldn't even tell you what, 6-7 months ago, maybe 4 months ago, I can't remember now, that you were contemplating quitting FPL for reasons that you're going to go into in a minute. And I was just like, to be honest, if you're thinking about it now, I would just kind of wait on it, wait till the end of the season or whatever, and then see how you're feeling. And then it gets to the end of the season, we're 3 or 4 weeks past it all, and you were pretty much like, you know what, I'm about 80% there. And I was just like, well, if you're 80% there, you're 100% there, because it's too high of a percentage for you. And the reality is that you quitting FPL, like we've discussed on voice messaging, is no one will care. You'll be thinking in your head that the whole of the FPL community will care. They won't. They won't care at all whatsoever. And after that initial week of FPL launching, it will end up with, genuinely, like you said, of you in that panic stage. You may have even had it just then, when I just told you that I thought the game was launched, that, oh my god, I want to be part of this, I want to be part of this. Once the season kicks off, you'll be thinking, actually, I'm going to be focusing on the fantasy games that I am going to be playing, which you can reveal to our Patreon audience. So, yeah, Ray, the first question, I suppose, is, for the audience, why are you quitting official FPL?
Yeah. How do we start? So the notes are more so that I cover everything I want to, so that I don't come out and think, oh shit, I didn't mention that one thing. Now that I've got everything here. So I think where it really kind of hit home was in December. Aston Villa were playing Manchester City, and Arsenal, we've arrived now. The process is finished. Like, we're contenders now. We win, we don't win, we're contenders. That's what my expectation is. And so Aston Villa are playing Manchester City in December, and I'm there thinking, oh, I hope Aston Villa win, but I don't want Watkins to score. Now, at that point, Watkins is just on fire, which he has been most of the season. He may have been FPL asset of the season for me. Him and Palmer, it's like almost a toss-up. And I'm sitting there watching this game, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Why am I so fixated about this asset who's at that point 27% owned? I don't own him. And I probably captain Haaland. I'm like, oh, you know what? I wouldn't mind Man City to score, but there was like this whole myriad of options of how I want this game to play out. And okay, Aston Villa won. I think Luis scored a penalty. They won 1-0. And then after the game, I'm sitting there and thinking, absolute fucking loser. And the reason is because, we'll highlight other fantasy games I'm part of, is I shouldn't give a shit about this asset when they're playing against genuine competitors of my football team. What would I rather have? A 10k finish or Arsenal win the league? Yeah, because I'm not winning FPL. Yeah, I'm not winning the game. Okay, so I sat there afterwards and I thought to myself, this is absolutely pathetic for me. And that's really when the transition of thinking started to happen, Stevo. Because, like you rightly said, is, okay, when I was sending you the audio, because it really has been since January, I was kind of sharing it with you.
Right.
And I thought to myself you can't just switch off something, in my opinion. I'm not that type of person. I have a very obsessive personality. When I play to win. I don't play to take part. And afterwards, I'm like, you need to start retraining your mind to give up this specific game. Before I go on, did you have any other questions on that?
No, I was just hoping you'd just continue chatting.
Yeah. Sure. So
that's ridiculous.
When I was discussing it with you, what's up? Sorry.
Just continue that line. I just laugh because it's just too professional. It's just like, Ray, just chat. You're not going to get interrupted. Just give your thought process. If I need to pick up on something, I don't edit anything. This is, in fact, going back to what you said, funny enough, about, are we recording this? It's like, this is why I say to Jason all the time, either one, do not say a single fucking word before we go live, and then we just hit the music and then we get on with it. Or B, if you're going to talk, either before the show or after the show, we do it for members only. It's up to you. So we've now come to a conclusion that don't say anything. Just don't say a fucking thing. I said it to Ash on FPL Juice, because I'll never forget when we were in the studio and he went, I can see Steve-O's fuming at the moment because we're having this interesting conversation about whatever it was. And he's like, Steve-O knows that we should be recording this. And I just went, yes. I've said it 1,000 times. Yes, of course. This conversation is fucking gold. And yet we're not even recording this. And yet you've got an audience which will be fascinated to hear what you guys are saying about whatever the subject matter was. And yet we're just in a studio just chatting with one another. We're in a studio. Hit the fucking record button. It's the same with Discord or YouTube, whatever. It's like, I'm in front of the technology which will just allow me to go record. You press a button.
Yeah.
Like, I know that you're not going to say something, or Dan or Jason or whomever is going to say something that's going to be offensive or what's the word, Ray, that I'm looking for, which controversial or libelous. I mean, don't get me wrong, Jason has said some things where I've been like, thank God we weren't recording, but that's very, very rare. But I remember, I think it may have been it wasn't the last stream, it was certainly quite near towards the end of the season, where Jason had basically, I don't even think he signed off. And me and him were genuinely talking about Patreon, and we were having a really in-depth, like a proper in-depth discussion. We were speaking for about 15 or 20 minutes. And I was thinking, are we still live here? Because Jason asked me a really personal question, but I couldn't give a shit if I said it out loud or shared it with our audience. I was just like, do you know what? Fuck it. So I asked him the question, are we live having this discussion? He went, no, we went off air 20 minutes ago. I was just like, what? What you mean we've been just talking to each other one-on-one, which is fine, of course it is, but what we've just had this conversation is fucking gold dust for the audience. Because the audience, like people like yourself and whomever, are going to be fascinated to hear about Jason's opinion about whatever, because it's very rare to hear Jason's opinion on various subject matters, because he has it behind the curtains, which is cool. And it's why I've told him a million times, I want you to do fucking Patreon podcasts. I want you to do members videos when we were doing it, because no one wants to hear from me anymore. I don't want to hear from me anymore. I want to hear from you, Jace, the other person behind Elite FPL. Talk to us about your opinions about whatever fucking bollocks you're thinking about. People are interested. And that's why, going back to recording, so hence you completely throw me a curveball there with, do you have any questions? I just want to give you the ball, Ray, and you continue chatting. Where were we even at the moment? So quitting FPL, and you saying about being to the point of where you couldn't even support Aston Villa because you were hoping Haaland would score 15 goals against Aston Villa, which means this, that and the other. Carry on. Can you hear me, Ray? And for some reason, Discord has completely crashed me. I am still recording, so I'll continue chatting, maybe on Ray's behalf, but for some reason...
Oh, hey,
can you hear me again?
I don't know what happened.
No, it's been doing that quite regularly for me and Dan. Like, for some reason, it disconnects.
Okay.
So go on, Ray. Continue what you were saying, mate.
Yeah. It's
Back to FPL.
I have this. I have this mannerism where I could just go on and on and on, but I shall continue. So, and I must be honest with you, when I started thinking about the leaving FPL or not playing next year, is it's addiction, isn't it? It's an addiction, and it's become an unhealthy one for myself. What started off as enjoyment and interest and more skin in the game of the official FPL, which I've never played before 4 years ago, which is ridiculous considering I've been playing fantasy football for 20 years, is I thought to myself, well, in my job in project management is, I deal with data, I deal with planning, I deal with contingencies, I deal with numbers all day for the last 10 years of my work. So I was thinking, and I enjoy it. So I was like, oh, there's a game where I can do that. Brilliant. Then what was definitely happening in the last 18 months is I thought to myself, bloody hell, I work 9-10 hours a day doing this on my day job, and I'm getting paid for it, and I'm doing this and spending as much time, I'll be honest with you, and thinking, I don't even get fucking paid for this. And it was becoming a stress because I was involved in multiple different communities. There's a community itself, obviously, and then there's initially the Wildcats, which I really enjoyed, and then it went to becoming the first pundit with FPL Juice, and then being part of Only One Bonus Point, and then the FPL Way, where me and Dan were kind of releasing threads.
And it's disconnected. Again, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I don't know what's going on. I wish I had some editing tools which would allow this, because Ray was on a... There we are. For some reason, right. Discord's constantly disconnecting. So yeah, you were part of these podcasts.
Yes. And what was happening is I was getting the stress because there was a expectation that I put myself of. Oh, you gotta do threads, Ray. You gotta do content. You gotta do the video here and there. You gotta go to studio with Juice. You gotta, Only One. I'm the one who invited myself on there. There was an expectation on me, and to be honest with you, it's because of my personality with hobbies. Is I became obsessive and I was becoming unhappy. A lot of people hate international break. I love international breaks, Steve-O. I can refresh, reset, and pretty much kind of enjoy watching football or watching something else. It could be anything whatsoever. So, but when I was starting to have that thinking in January, it was emotional. It was sensitive. I was having a shit season, all of the things you could throw at it. But in the months when I was really keeping it to myself, the only person that really knew was yourself. Because I feel our mindsets are very similar with this aspect, or in certain aspects, is I started to train myself we did less pods. I went to the studio maybe once for FPL Juice. Less pods, obviously, with Only One. No threads whatsoever with FPL Way. In total, I've done 2 throughout the season. The season before, I did 17-18 and did multiple pods and enjoying the game once again. So, and that's when really I thought that, I'm not going to play the Euro Fantasy, like I didn't play World Cup Fantasy when I was abroad and absolutely loved the tournament. And that will kind of be, not the acid test, but more of, Ray, you're watching the football, you have no skin in the game, no assets, none of this stuff. Can you now continue to play fantasy? And again, I'm sure we'll go on to which one, but can I watch this game and enjoy the football itself? If you don't want to watch, you switch it off. Does that make sense? Like, okay, well, I'm not bothered now. I watched half of the Holland game, Devo, because I was doing something else. If I had assets in the game, I bet I would have watched the fucking game and got angry and stressed. Oh my god, I hope Gakpo scored. Oh my god, why didn't I get Depay, excuse me. So...
Have you watched or listened to the Tangent episode with Az and Yelena? Yeah, have you heard it yet?
Yes, I have.
Right.
Yes, I have.
So right at the end, and by the way, I voice messaged Nick this. I said it wasn't a critique. It was just my opinion on the episode, which was very, very good. I really enjoyed it. But I said for any of the tangent episodes, whether it's with me, whether it's with Ed, whether it's Yelena and Az, I don't care. They always seem to start off quite slow in the sense of that, oh, where are we going with this? We're supposed to be here talking about nothing to do with FPL, but ironically, the one thing that we have in common is FPL. So I kind of I haven't actually made this point, and if Nick's even going to be listening into this, which I doubt, but I think I'll even voice message him this. I think what you're better off doing is starting off with FPL chat, and this not in the sense of, so come on then, tell me what your assets are. Like, no, I don't mean that. I mean, just talk to the person like I am with you now about, in this specific case, why you're quitting FPL and your thought processes around the game. And I think if Nick starts off with the conversation to do with FPL, which is why everybody knows that particular individual, i.e. like Az, then it kind of like sets the tone of where we can go with the conversation. Whereas when you just go into a conversation which is, so, Ray, tell us about your time in Vietnam, you're just going to be like, it's just a complete curveball that throws you off, where you're like, oh yeah, we're not supposed to be talking about FPL, but I'll just talk about my time in Vietnam. It's like, no, that's we can't do it like that. It's just ridiculous. So the reason why I'm saying all this is because when Az finally kind of got a bit into his groove, it was right at the end of the video. Like, it was pretty much, I would say, the last 10 minutes or so, they kind of started feeling a lot more comfortable. And at this point, that's when Az kind of let loose about how he's feeling about FPL this upcoming season, which he pretty much said literally what you just said, which is, I don't want to be watching, in what he said was Luton versus Burnley, or as I always use, Fulham versus Crystal Palace, because I've got a Fulham defender in that particular game. I'd rather be doing something else, watching something else, or actually practically doing something else, other than worrying about the fact that whether my defender gets a clean sheet. Because that's the reason why I would watch a Monday night football game, is because of the fact that I've got an asset in that particular fixture. And I think about it, I think the amount of wasted time I have had watching games I literally could not give a flying fuck about, but I'm watching it through force, because like you've just mentioned about an addiction, I'm watching this so that the following day I feel I have to do a Patreon podcast about my feelings towards the game and everything. And I've really got to get into the mindset of like, Steve-O, this isn't your job. You know, when anybody, I don't care whether it's you, Ray, or whatever, sets up some form of payment plan that goes towards something that you do, I don't think that the audience should be entitled to have X, Y, and Z. And Pete, I'll be honest with you, Ray, I feel like, I should be doing what Planet FPL does, because they release 500 podcasts a week and 495 of them are through Patreon. I must do what they're doing. It's like, yeah, but Steve-O, it's their job. It's genuinely James's job. That's what he does. And for me, this isn't my job. We set up the Patreon because basically me and Jason got to the point of where, like you've discussed with me, where it's like, fucking hell, man, like we're putting a lot of hours and time into this, and we're getting a lot of people consuming what we're doing, and it's very, very, very difficult for me to just continue doing this for free, because like you said, and like Dan says, because you both know business, this time needs to be paid for now, because you're doing things which are going out your way when you could be doing something else. It's a really weird conversation to have, to be honest with you. And the point I'm trying to get at is that when you're essentially force feeding yourself doing something, you've got to look deep down inside yourself and ask yourself why you're doing this. So in the world of fitness, for example, there's a lot of type A personalities out there where actually doing the gym is one of the worst things they can do, because all they're doing is replacing one addiction with another, and then they just, like you said, it becomes a very unhealthy addiction to have. Even though they're going to the gym, it's actually making them worse. And it's the same for me, and it's the same for what Az was saying on this Tangent podcast, which was, I'm taking a step back from content next year. I'm taking a step back from consuming content. I'm taking a step back from watching football. I just want to be able to enjoy my time with Yelena, with my family, doing things which actually bring enjoyment to my life. And it will be interesting to see if Az does stick with it, and it'd be very interesting to see if I stick with it, because it is, like you said, what you were saying about Threads and the various podcasts that you were part of and everything. I bet, again, deep down, you were feeling like, fuck, I need to be producing some form of content because that's what you perceive your followers want.
Yes. No, it's I 100% concur. I mean, first of all, regarding the tangent, yeah, you kind of need that initial icebreaker before you get into the meat and potatoes. I fully agree. So yeah, like a common interest in FPL is, yeah, a great way to kind of garner the momentum quickly, isn't it? Because you're quite right. The end of it was fantastic when he was talking about Mark Southerns and the relationship he has with him. Yeah, I definitely feel the ending was magical. Absolutely loved it. So, and I, sorry, could you repeat your question again?
Well, no, the question was essentially like, did you feel that with the content that you were making for FPL,
Got it.
yeah, was essentially affecting your life, and you realised, actually, I don't need to be doing this.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you kind of refreshing me there. I mean, I'll be honest, as I always am with yourself, but with everyone, is I'd at times have a sleepless night thinking, oh, for God's sake, I need to do a thread out tomorrow.
Wow.
I have a recording tomorrow, and there's a cheesy line, when the fun stops, stop. You can't just stop with my personality the way I am. Is there has to be a transition. You don't just quit smoking, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You gradually, moderately, decrease your intake. That's just how I feel you can, have a prolonged period of quitting an addiction. So, and not only would it be with that, but it would be with, oh, should I go for this asset? And even when I get the asset, I'm like, oh my God, why did I go for him? Oh, I should have done that. Oh, should I knee-jerk quickly? Because basically, you kind of have unlimited transfers, let's be honest. Okay, you take hits, but you have unlimited transfers. So when it's out there kind of reaching for you, there'd be at times where I'm like, oh my God, why did I get Reece James? And that obviously fed to the fact of doing content as well. And, I'd like to say that, when someone says, do you know Ray? A lot of people have heard my name of some sort, because at least initially I really, put myself out there to be known and someone who's decent at the game and, writes half decent threads, especially with differentials. So I started putting my expectation on myself to the point of, you're quite right, I was not enjoying the journey anymore. It became a work. It became a source of, for myself, that I'm not enjoying what I'm doing and I am not getting paid. And ultimately, that's what it is. When I'm investing time into something, I want the fruits of my labor. I was getting no fruits anymore. Followers here and there, and likes here and there, and reposts here and there, and some companies would actually reach out to me and say, hey Ray, would you like to endorse this? If you get a referral, we'll give you a cash. Or, hey, would you like to be part of the team? And then I kind of said, I'd love that, but what are we thinking of regarding payment? Even some who were comfortable to pay me a certain amount. The amount of hours I need to put in, Stevo, just wasn't, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Mind the pun for a moment.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself is, and I'll name you the companies offline in voice note, but, I was kind of thinking, it's just not worth it. Even if somehow the dream, in air quotes, is to do this as a job, I don't think it's a dream for what I've seen it do to other people. Major content creators, or even growing ones, because I don't like to use the word small, even growing ones as well. I felt like, you don't want to do this. I can tell by a year ago looking at your videos, because a bit like yourself, I do my research, and I look at you now, and I'm like, you're a pale of the individual that you were a year ago. You don't enjoy this anymore. No amount of money can be thrown at you to the point where you enjoy it. And I'll give you a life example here. The biggest role I've done, where I got the highest basic salary, Devo, made me the most unhappy. Now, this is a completely different kettle of fish, but it was stressing me at work. I was only in that job for 15 months. I got married at the time. I ballooned in weight so much, and I was in really good shape because obviously I was preparing myself for the wedding. You know, I did a year of training to get in the best shape I possibly could. It wasn't quite the shape I told you I was at my peak, but I was looking really good. I got this new job thinking this is the dream. This is going to set me for 20 years, Steve-O. That's what the job was supposed to do. I was just another number. Too much stress. I was working probably 12 hours a day. And you include the travel in there, because at that point there was no such thing as remote work, and you go into work every day, you come back. And I thought, fuck that, it's not worth it. I was getting mental issues. I had to see a doctor about it. You know, I'm very, very open about mental battles I've had, and I had to see someone for a little while. I had to see a therapist. And not that this game will put me into a state where I need to see a therapist, but it's giving me the same mental triggers. And if I continue to do it that way, it will not calm down because, once again, I have obsessive personality. And therefore, I had to... not really talking to many people, but I was more talking to people who don't play FPL. And you, if you like. And saying that, you know, what are your thoughts with addiction of something? And some of them are with booze, with gym, with women, with work. And, you know, for me, I gave the example of FPL and they could all understand. And that's where the small talk comes in. I don't just say, help me how to quit FPL, because then it's like, it's just a fucking game. It's more of, have you had issues with addiction before? And then talk to them about it. And then I tell them about my one with FPL. And therefore, you know, I was talking about how to quit smoking I mean, I've never smoked, but how to quit smoking is moderately cut down on things. And that's what I was doing. I mean, look, Steve-O, you know, I go to Vietnam once a year. It's like a 12, 13, 14-hour flight. On YouTube, I would download 4 or 5 videos and be like, all right, brilliant, 10 hours is taken by. So you can see what kind of consumption I was doing of the content. So then I calmed myself down. Okay, I went to Algarve's, nowhere near the amount of journeys. I had no FPL content on there. I put a movie on there. I was telling you about how I've been reading again. Since the season has ended, I finished 2 books. Not 2 books as in page for page 1 to page 500. But Steve-O, those unfinished books have been gathering dust for like 6 months. Why is that? Because I spend my spare time, in air quotes, playing this game. So you can see already what mentally it did to me. Not to the point where I'm breaking down and having issues, you know, and like really losing myself, because I can't. You know, I'm married, I got kids, mortgage. You know, it has been categorized, but you know, to a hobby. But that hobby wasn't becoming a hobby anymore. It was becoming a way of life.
Yeah, and something I want to pick up on what you just said, which was, and I feel it regarding the whole thing regarding an addiction. I find with FPL, because of what you said, which is you've got unlimited transfers, yes, the -4s, but setting that all aside, you've got unlimited transfers. There's no boundary in place. So like with an alcoholic or whatever other drug that someone's addicted to, or in my case, when I was addicted to the gym, there's no boundary in place to stop me from going to the gym. Or there's you know, as I'm walking, if I'm an alcoholic, I'm walking down the street, there's a very, very, very high chance that I'm going to be walking past a pub. And there's no, if there were boundaries in place, like there are with Sky, like there are with the Telegraph games, which is what, Ray? Oh, I've only got a certain amount of transfers, so I got to invest in that player for X amount of time until their fixture change. Whereas for some reason there is no some reason, I've just answered it. In FPL, it's so knee-jerky and reactatory that it's, oh my God, just get rid of this player now. Get him gone. Bring in this player. It doesn't matter. I can just bring him in. Because there's no boundaries in place. It's just, well, if I take out this particular player and I bring in, I'm just going to pick a name out of the hat, Gakpo, seeing as you used him, and then Gakpo gets injured during the train, it's just, I'll just bring in another player. Oh, well, it's a -4, who cares? Whereas in the world of Sky or Telegraph, and probably other fantasy games as well, it's like, hold on a minute here. I actually have to make sure
Patient.
that I control those transfers, because shit, if I make a stupid knee-jerk one, that's one less transfer that could be used in a vital situation later on in the season. Another thing that I've
Yeah.
always said about that feeds into the addiction of FPL / the way we play FPL is the price increase decreases. Now, I don't actually have a problem. I think it's a really good element of the game, the price rises and falls. I just wish it's the same old line. In fact, me and Az had it on Juice, didn't we? It was the whole thing of like the transparency of the game telling you who is officially rising and falling. I still don't quite understand why the game itself, who are so obsessed with this interaction on social media, that the best way to interact is like, again, I always use this line of 2 hours to go and it looks like Salah's going to be up in price. If you're wanting Salah in the game, you're going to have to get right in there now, because he's going to be going up to 13.1. Whatever. Or, you looking for a bargain? Well, good news for you. Cole Palmer may not have scored in 5 games, but he's going to be dropping down by 0.2 by the end of the week. I don't know. I don't really care. But at this point, at least you've got some kind of like, oh, wow, I know that Salah's going to be going up in price at this time. And you can kind of, like you said, be in a proactive mindset of like, right, well, I can potentially bring that particular player in if necessary. Whereas last season, I found it was, in fact, it's been the last few seasons, but I found last season really aggressive. The price changing and falling was so all over the place that you were kind of like, I was just kind of like waiting on that player, like Eze. I was waiting on that player to be 6.7 by Friday. He's already gone up to 6.8 by Wednesday. How? He's only had 20,000 transfers come through, and yet he's already gone up. And it's almost like some fucked up manipulation by the game itself, where actually we don't care about these price rise sites or falls. We don't care. We're just changing the prices when we feel like. And the thing is that because of this, it feeds into that addiction of what you're desperately wanting, which is, oh my god, I've only got a few drips of vodka left. Right then, I've got to go to the co-op and buy another bottle of vodka. And I don't know if I'm speaking shit or not. I don't know if you can add anything to that.
No,
Ray?
yeah. I mean, I wanted to go back to the former point regarding, the control of transfers. I literally in FPL feel like a kid in a candy store with an unlimited budget, if you like, to buy as many sweets as I want. And if I reverted to my work, I set these plans when I do projects. Yeah, so we have, sprints. This is what we need to achieve in this week. This is what we need to achieve in this week. This is the overall deadline. This is the amount of resources I can use. Hey, Stevo, this is your limit of hours you can use on this feature before you go to this feature. Yeah. So parameters and control are already put in place in a project. What FPL does is there is no control. And therefore, I can't help myself and think, well, I can do these knee jerks because, hey, it's only a -12. And what I love about the Telegraph, and I'm going to go into my 7th season next season, is that you've got 40 transfers. Yeah? You can't be knee jerk. If, who's the player who never plays? But Pedro Neto, if I've gambled on him to be in my team, and he starts, I'm like, okay, brilliant, I need him to start now. Does that mean I need to keep him? He's playing. Hey, he's playing. Pedro Neto is playing. Cool. Be patient with him. And like you said, unless he absolutely has a fall from grace, it's the injury that I expect, then you got that transfer to rely on. And the transfers are gold dust. And that's what I love about Telegraph. And as I've been transitioning away from FPL, which is to a point where now that's it, I'm not going to play next season, is that Telegraph is like, right, you got 40. Hey, Arthur, you have to be patient. Because I remember in my first year, going into the last 10 games of the season, Stevo, I had no transfers left in Telegraph. So I was just, and by the end of the season, I think I only had 7 fit players. And then I was like, oh my God, Ray, be the person you are in real life, be patient, have some plans in place. FPL didn't allow me to revert to my type. Was in the first, so I've been playing 4 seasons. In the first 2.5 seasons, if you like, I was being patient. I was being normal Ray, you know, kind of like this is how you are, and I got some really nice ranks, you know, 3 top 100k ranks. I'm very happy with that. And then last season, guess what I was doing? I was completely not reverting to my type. I made so many transfers, so many hits, so much knee jerk, consuming way too much fucking content to the point where I don't even think I'm making a choice anymore, Sivo. I'm like, oh, what's he doing? Or what's she doing? Oh, they're higher ranked than me. And I just can't deal with that anymore because it will just get worse. And that's the idea. It will get worse for my personality. And I keep reiterating for myself because you and I definitely have similar personality traits, which is why we voice note a lot. But other people are very much like, you know, and some did get back to me and say, oh, don't worry about it, Ray. It's only a game. Play it this way. Or play it casually and don't worry. Don't check Twitter. I'm like, no. I know how I am. I could never play casually FPL or a fantasy game because I love fantasy football. You know what I mean? Like, I actually love the concept of fantasy football. But FPL have made it too unlimited to a point where I have to step out. And I think it's the perfect time to do it for me now.
Do you think that this is for you, and I can talk on my own, obviously on my own behalf, but do you think that it was consuming a lot of content, and whether it was on X or YouTube or Twitch, whatever, do you think that had a negative effect on the way you play as well? Because I'm telling you now that, like, literally what you just said, which is you're looking in your mini leagues and then you go on X or whatever and you see that, am I the only person that hasn't got Trent Alexander-Arnold? Yet everybody else has. I need to get him in. I need to get him in. And it just, the more you see of this stuff, it's like with anything with social media, isn't it? It's a very, very small little magnifying glass looking at a very small thing, but it's made bigger and bigger and bigger because it's in your own little world for yourself. And again, because there's so much information / content out there, that it does feed into your insecurities and various other things that are going on. So it's just kind of like, I've got to do what they're doing. I've got to do what they're doing. I've got to do what they're doing, rather than what you just said, which is I just want to stick to my own thought processes. But because of the noise that's coming out from everything, it's why like with what you've done now, which is you've muted / blocked, but mainly muted anything to do with FPL, and it does help. It does.
Yeah, quite right. I mean, another thing about Telegraph is no one really. It's not mainstream. Yeah. Like, no one cares really. It's quite funny considering you could win 10 grand, and I think it might be going up to 20 grand. And in Sky as well, obviously you could, but I'm unsure if I'll play Sky. But you know, it's there's no content to really latch on to, if you like. There's nowhere to be addictive or obsessive. But again, you have the limitation of transfers. FPL definitely became a negative aspect for the last 18 months. Not just last 6 months, last 18 months. Even when I had a great season the season before last, my highest rank is it still had I didn't come out of the season or get the final rank and be like, yes, blah, 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 what a great rank, everything. It was more of, oh, thank fuck for that. You know, I don't want that feeling. And you're right. It started to have a negative influence on me to the point where I'm like, why should I do content? You know, that's literally what it was. I value myself, obviously. I'm very outspoken, very confident, all that bollocks. But, you know, I was kind of thinking, you know, like, the only time I enjoyed doing content last season and, you know, like, is having a pod with only 1 bonus points, but that's because I'm podding with my friends. Yeah, I'm not podding about content. I don't actually care what we spoke about. I'm talking to my friends. You know, we're buddies. And maybe when I did the Madueke thread last season, because he was 0.7% owned, Noni Madueke of Chelsea. And apart from that, it's been a slog. That's really the word. It's a work. I'm tired, and it affected me at home as well. Like, you know, let's say kickoff's at 12:30 on a Saturday. That means deadline's at 11 because it's 1.5 hours before, which doesn't help to the mental aspect for me. And I'm in front of my computer at 10 a.m. So 2.5 hours before the actual kickoff, I'm there looking at leaks, looking at 3 or 4 contents, talking to some trusted people I know, and I'm just like, this is how much of a loser am I right now? And where it really hit home hilariously, watching the Euros, I'm looking at all the content on X, and I'm thinking, how much of a fucking loser am I 9 months of the year? All of these stats, like when someone was saying, "Oh, my match day 3, should I stick or twist?" I told you the words I muted. I muted everything to do with GW. You know, like game week, everything with game week, BGW blank game week, double game week, blank game week, and I was literally just thinking triple game week, and I'm literally just thinking, okay, I'm not going to mute the person yet, but I'm going to select I'm not interested in the post, and when I continuously do that, it won't show me fantasy content anymore, even if it's from you, for example, who I haven't muted, for example. And it was, look, man,
You
I'm
must
looking
like
at
the bill
deadlines
then.
and stuff like that. I'm like, not looking forward to it.
Yeah. Just of interest, what you were saying you're addicted to content. So what, including X, what content exactly were you consuming, and how often were you consuming it on a daily basis? Forget weekly, but on a daily basis. What was like, and give or take, what was a daily Ray Qureshi Monday to Sunday FPL content consumption? What we're kind of looking at. So you touched upon the fact that from 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, whatever deadline it was, we're just going to use Saturday as an example. So 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, you were consuming FPL content. So yeah, what was an average Monday to Sunday kind of week for you when it came to consuming FPL content?
So on average, and I work it out because that's just how I am. I'm a stats guy. I got project board, so obviously I've got an FPL project board. Is I average 90 minutes a day.
A day
of content. That's
is that YouTube/podcast only?
YouTube / podcast only.
That's 90 minutes a day. So then, how much on X would you? I mean, how much on X would you be consuming? So how many people on X do you follow? And of that following, how much roughly are to do with FPL? And then how many spaces would you be part of / hosting on a daily basis, give or take?
Well, I mean, it was a running gag last season, but when I'd join a space, I'd be invited straight away because I was doing spaces before they really became popular, and they're not popular anymore in FPL. But, you know, during that time, I was really getting on there before then. You see Scout doing them, Hub doing them. So a lot of people know that's how I grew I'll be honest with you, spaces is what grew my following massively, because I'd host them. I'd then, you know, who'd I get? I got Nim on there on Wildcats. I got Juice on there. I got someone who got like 9 top 10k finishes and stuff. You know, like that really helped my following. But again, but I'm just looking at last season. The season before, it was easily 2 to 2.5 hours of just audio and visual. I'd say even last season, including X, I was probably spending over 2.5 hours a day. If you include everything, on average, easily.
2.5 hours a day consuming things to do with FPL. That blows my mind because for me, I would just be consuming. This was last season. It was just FPL Juice. That was it. Now, whatever me and you may think of FPL Juice, in the sense of they don't talk about FPL, the reality is that they do talk about FPL, and that's why we're all brought together with the show, is because we're all there because of FPL. So that's what, a 2-hour show, give or take, once a week, and then you throw on Streamception, that's 4 hours. So I was consuming roughly 4 hours a week of FPL content. But the problem is that I'm someone that's part of a YouTube channel that then creates content as well. So I'm kind of like stuck in the middle of this thing of where not only am I consuming content from others, specifically FPL Juice, I'm also creating content for others. So I'm spending God knows how many hours a week then creating content for others, and like for me, you just can't escape it. Certainly, as I spoke to the guys with Juice about a billion times, is that I think that the last season specifically with the Mrs. Plonker episode, they found
So funny.
it was funny for one reason, is that it wasn't anything. It literally had nothing to do with FPL apart from maybe a total time of about, how long did it go on for? 2.5, 3 hours, that episode, and give or take.
Yeah, I mean, it went in like 10 minutes. That's how it felt.
That's exactly it. It was a 3 hour, give or take 3 hour show, and I would say of that, let's just be positive here. Let's think they spent about 45 minutes speaking FPL. Maybe even push it to an hour. So there's 2 hours worth of content there that had nothing to do with FPL. But the irony is, of course, Ray, is that that's when the audience were gravitating towards the show. And then it's no coincidence that, I mean, through the Total Stevo podcast and actually personally voice noting Nick, is that I said to them, you've nailed it now. You've now found what your show is. It's the reason why we're here is because of FPL. And we go back to the tangent episodes. There's a reason why we're here. It's because of FPL. We don't want to talk about FPL. We'll talk about anything. But it's why, for instance, on their Naughties show this week for the Decade Dilemmas, that we as the audience find it more interesting when there's two people having just a conversation with one another, and we're just listening in, we're just spying in on the conversation, enjoying it for what it is, because it's so free flowing and they're enjoying the conversation. I always use Mark Goldbridge as the example of a couple of weeks ago when they were covering a particular match, and it was him and his co-host Will, and they weren't talking about the football, Ray. They were just literally just talking films. That's all they were doing. But they were enjoying it. It wasn't this, we're forcing ourselves to have to answer these super chats about the same old fucking question of, how do you think England are going to do? What England tournament do you think was the best? Do you think Gareth Southgate are going to play a back three or a back five or a back two? Do you think Gareth Southgate's the right manager taking us forward? Like, they're sick to fucking death of talking about it. Whereas the second they start
100%.
talking about films, they're happy, they're laughing, they're smiling. And it goes back to it literally what you said earlier, which was about you've personally seen certain content creators gone from what they were when they first started to when it's become maybe not necessarily their job, but something that they're aspiring to be, where they're really putting the effort in, where their videos have become, oh, you don't look like you're enjoying it. It's the same with Mark Goldbridge.
Yeah.
I can see that after a period of time, like, I can't even listen to his stuff much at the moment because, number one, he's producing a lot of content, which, as in specifically the live streams. I don't watch his videos, but his live streams, I can hear that he's getting more and more like, fucking hell, this is a slog. I really don't want to have to talk football anymore. I'm sick to fucking death of talking football. I just want to talk about what I'm going to be eating tonight or whatever. But it's his job at the end of the day. This is what he does. But I can see that it's having a negative impact on him. I can see it. You can just see in the face, for argument's sake. But certainly with FPL Juice, if they just stick to the format of, let's just be a bunch of people that are like in a pub and just having a conversation in a constructive way. So like we have these set times throughout the whole show. Brilliant. You know, it doesn't matter if we overrun chatting these particular sections, but at the end of the day, we as people are more interested in the person that's on screen rather than just hearing the same old regurgitated shit about the fact that, I think Haaland could be the best captain this week or whatever. You know, I don't care because I've got my own thought process about the captaincy. I just want to know what you're like in bed. You know, and as Mrs. Plonk divulged a lot of information, we don't need to go into it there. But that's what kept the audience engaged, hearing about the sex life of Mr. and Mrs. Plonker and their wedding and various other drunken exploits. That was more interesting than just hearing two people go, yeah, I'm thinking of going with a back three this week and playing a 3-4-3, and so on and so forth. And yeah, the point I'm trying to get at...
You want timeless content, isn't it? You want timeless content,
yes.
That's in my opinion. I mean, when you get a weekly game week, it's redundant and expired by then. I mean, yeah, they'll get hit still, you know, the major players, the top four, if you like, but you know, it's dead after that. Like you'll never see it again. And the thing about what tangents are and Juice, and I hope they transition more away from FPL and eventually just be called Juice of some sort, is timeless content. That Plonker episode you can watch in 5 years' time, you know, and you know, and that's another aspect for me as well, which is it's great that you've kind of triggered that remembrance for me. Is that I want to watch content which I can watch again in 5 years, if that makes sense. I'm not the biggest movie buff, but I like movies, and you know, I'm a massive fan of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I find it absolutely hilarious because I can watch it now and I can watch it in 10 years' time, and there's still relevance. You know, there's context to the joke, if you like, and or the content that you're watching, and that's why, a bit like yourself, I've watched so many reruns of the Tangent episodes because I love them so much, because I'm like, this is timeless content. You know what I mean? And you know, that's why and that's why I think that was the biggest ever live watching that Plonker the Plonker episode. Funny enough, I went in studio the next week, and I think we garnered about 600 in live, but in that one there was about 4,000 people that watched live, because it was just absolutely brilliant content. It was just my favorite episode, because you just saw real people being real about their life, and that's the kind of content like yourself that I like to watch, that I like to consume. So I agree, concur.
I think that when you're making FPL fun, putting the fun in the F of FPL, is that you again, I go back to it. We're there for a reason. We're watching it for the FPL stuff, but actually, we kind of want to just try and get past that as quickly as possible. We can move on to, right, let's have a laugh about X, Y, and Z. In fact, funny you bring up about the fact that you can watch, what was it, Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yeah.
So you can watch that whenever you want. It's the same with me when it comes to the bill. It's still relevant to the day. Crime still happens. So the police still exist. And with what they said on the Naughties this week, when Nick said, and I by the way, I have voice noted in this. He said, the only problem with shows like Breaking Bad and Lost is that you can only really watch it once, and you can't really go back because you know what happens. And I just messaged saying, do you know how much that pissed me off? Have you seen Breaking Bad, Ray?
Yeah, season 1. I enjoyed season 1.
You've only seen season 1?
Yeah, I had enough of it by then. It's not usually my kind of kettle of fish, those kind of shows. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Patreon podcast. Cheers. Okay. Well,
Patreon's been cancelled. Anyway, go on.
I've watched Breaking Bad start to finish about 6 or 7 times, because it's just, for me, one of the most engrossing TV shows I've ever watched. It's like with various other shows that I've seen 100,000 times, because in the words of Ben Stiller in Extra, it's layered. You see things that are like, that's, especially shows like Breaking Bad that have been deliberately designed in a way which you do, when you come back to, you go, oh, that's why that person stood there. Oh, that's why the colour of that wall. I mean, I was told, and I need to watch it, there's a YouTube video about the colours that are used in Breaking Bad. I really do need to watch it. It's been so well crafted that actually you're supposed to watch it on several occasions. It's the same with why The Office is just so good, is because the jokes are so layered and it's so relatable to real life. And it's the same with Lost. You know, Lost series 1 and 2. I mean, when Ash said the line, I couldn't get past episodes 1 and 2. I was just like, he's a lunatic. Have you seen Lost,
Yeah,
Ray?
me too. Yeah. No, I've got the whole box set.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got the whole box set. So, no, sorry. So, therefore, yes, I have seen it and I am a fan. Especially the first 2 or 3 seasons were absolutely unbelievable.
You know, series 1, like Nick said, he would have to, like I was doing a couple of years ago when I first watched. So I watched, at the time when Lost came out, it was on Channel 4. And then Series 2 went to Sky, and it was like, great, I can't watch it anymore. But my friends were talking about it, and I was like, fucking hell, I'm missing out on this. And then whatever happened. Fast forward 20 years, and I'm like, right, I've been given Amazon Prime for free. Let's see if let's just see. There was a reason why I started watching Lost. I'm pretty certain it's funny enough because of Chain Wrestling. And they were talking about Lost, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to watch this program again. And I watched episode 1. Right, I've got to watch episode 2. I was watching 3 to 4 episodes a night. Sorry, and I was so my psyche was so fucked that even at work I was like, I've got to get home and watch the next episode. I can't wait to fucking watch the next episode. It was that embedded in me. The point I'm trying to get across with all this is that I just think that because people, not just in the FPL community, but people in general, can gravitate towards someone talking about TV shows or whatever, and there's always an opinion there, is that you want to stick with it. And because shows like FPL Juice or Elite FPL have got that, or Chain Wrestling have got that vibe of like, yeah, we are here to talk about a specific subject, but actually I'm probably more actually interested in hear what these people think about this in a structured format. It's like I'll give you an example with this podcast. We've been going on for an hour and a half now. It feels like I've been talking to you for 3 minutes. It may not sound like there's structure to this, but there is. It's right, we want to address this subject, this subject, this subject. But if we go on tangents, there's a context to why we're talking about it. And I'd like to think the audience, hopefully they write some comments, Ray. We'll drop a comment in the things. And this is why I keep banging on about the fact that with the Patreon pods that we do, is that I want people to comment, so we just have this continuous conversation going on and on and on. But yeah, people can gravitate towards the fact that, oh, these guys like Lost. Well, I actually like The Sopranos because of whatever TV shows they gravitate towards. But I can't even remember why we came onto this subject matter. But what I will go on to is, so you said about the Telegraph game. That I'm assuming that is, well, I know that's going to be the game that you're going to be playing next season, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll absolutely continue that into my... So I worked out I've actually played for 6 years, so I'll be going into my 7th season, and absolutely, because for multiple reasons. Obviously, you have the control of just 40 transfers. It's the Premier League and the FA Cup, which is nice. So, every weekend kind of has something to it. And also you can hide your team. So, you make it visible or invisible, I guess, but and that's the real excitement of when you play. And I have to play cash leagues, like I have to have something on it, and I've been part of one for the last 4 years where we have a minimum of 12 people. It's absolutely brilliant, and the great thing is that, like you rightly said, is it teaches the patience aspect. When I go for a player, I need to stick to it. You got to give them minimum 5-6 games unless they get injured. So last season I think I had a 1 year for about 4 or 5 games when he started to play well in the FA Cup. I put him in and I'm like, look, he's starting, Ray. It's a completely different mindset. He's starting, that's already a win. And then when and then kind of go forward to, okay, well, I will keep Dingra, for example, because in the FA Cup they're playing against Burton and he's starting. Does that make sense? So the patience aspect is so good, and I never have ever spent more than an hour a week on my team after the season starts, because there's no need to. What am I doing? It's like, this is your team. Is anyone injured? No. Okay, go for him. That's it. And they got the points, and they don't have the captaincy chip, which I absolutely adore. And it's very much of, okay, you get a point for an assist, you get a point for a goal, you get a point for a clean sheet. That's it's just so black and white. It's wonderful. So, and I'll just continue with that. And I'm really relying on my habit of what I do in my free time, if that makes sense. Like, if I'm not playing Telegraph, what am I doing? And that's where the reading and getting back into the kind of pods I love in regards to, mental aspects, hearing from people I respect, learning a bit more about, to be cringy, how to unlock certain mechanics of your mind, and even stuff like, what's a better way to interact with your child if this happens, like
Mate,
spend my time on stuff or that's value building.
yeah, no, Mind Pump actually talk about that a lot with people that have got a serious addiction to training and what they're actually missing out on, spending time with loved ones. Like my brother will never admit this, but my brother's got a problem with the gym, and it's when he first became a father, he essentially would tell his former girlfriend, he would just be like, you've got to understand that I only get to go gym X amount of times this week, so I can't be there for our child because I'm going to be at the gym. Well, you, Ray, as a dad,
Wow.
and me as somebody who listens to Mind Pump and they talk a lot about fatherhood, it's, Mike, it's going to be more important in the very, very long run of you being with your child and have to look after him with your girlfriend than going to the gym and doing an hour session which you could do anytime in your life. Your son is only going to be this age literally now, and you want to be spending as much time with him as possible. Don't worry about the gym. Think about the connection with your child, your girlfriend, your friends, your family. That's way more important than worrying about, can I grow an extra vein on my arm? I don't mean that literally, but it's just the truth. And you're absolutely bang on the money. It's funny you mention about connection with people. I bought a book, an actual book, Ray. It was our mate Corey Wayne, the relationship expert, and it should be coming. I'm just looking here now. It should be coming today. I believe it is the book that he released about 15 years ago, if not less than that. The 3% Man, How to Be a 3% Man. Because you obviously you watched / bought that book many years ago regarding how to date women. Remind me what it was called again.
Oh, The Game.
The Game. That's it. Yeah. So I'm going to be reading a lot of that. Because according to Corey Wayne, you need to read it at least 10 to 15 times to get a grasp of it. And I really want to speak to Dan, actually, because he's actually got the book. And I want to ask him about, look, in this book, how many tips and tricks do you genuinely use in real life that has helped you with women? And when I read the book myself, I'm going to look for it and go, oh, I do this, but I don't do that. Oh, she's doing this. I didn't realise. Fucking hell, I was answering the questions in the wrong way. Maybe I should do this. You were saying about Emma the other day about the testing of me, and the whole thing of like, you did really well in that situation because she's quizzing you about the fact that whose numbers have you got, how many people have you dated, why aren't I the special one, and everything. And you said to me that, to be fair, Steve, you dealt with that very, very well.
You did. Yeah, I mean, so like with The Game specifically, I think I've used pretty much every single technique that they put in there. When I was kind of doing the EUA pickup artist kind of days when I was single, and I was like, yeah, let me try it. Because a bit like yourself, I'd like to say, there's a base there, but then it's obviously just building on it, isn't it? And I did. And then you start to... I love how the conversation's transitioned here. And then you start to build it into your own identity, isn't it? Like, I still use techniques of The Game even at work.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've told you a few personal things. But, I still use the technique at work when I need something done, or when someone has been a bit too big for their bridges, or when someone needs to be picked up a bit, is I have used The Game in the concept of people, not only, women when, let's be honest, I want to get in their pants, many years ago, fucking hell, is that I use that as a way of life now. So it's funny you say about the 3% Man. I've read The Game 3 times. That's all I've needed. The first time was to learn about this guy and this unbelievable book. The second time was to kind of rejig myself with the techniques and how he used them in the concept and context, depending on what the environment. is. And the third one, Steve-O, the way I enjoyed it the most, I literally just read it as a storybook. Does that make sense? Because now I'm thinking I have, in air quotes, clocked this per se, in air quotes, but I'm never a finished book. I always love learning. I always love understanding. I always like growing. I always like understanding people's thinking. That's why I ask you a lot of questions on voice note, as you do me. I read it as a story and thought, it's absolutely ingenious the way it's been done, as long as you put it in the category of self-help and a story. Don't put it in as this is the Bible, which I did the first time I read it. And the second time it was more of, okay, this girl is kind of giving me the cold shoulder. How do I neg her positively to make her bring her wall down a little bit? That's what these books become. They become a reference point. But then when I was like, look, touch wood, I'm married, I'm very confident how I talk to people, men, women, depending on whatever the environment or whatever the situation is. I like to say I know how to pivot myself. And I learned a lot of that through the game, not necessarily with the words, but with understanding and foreseeing when issues come up and how to then use it. And this 3% man, I'm pretty sure is the same.
Yeah, there's a reason why I brought this up is because of the whole thing of when you're removing something that's part of your life, in this specific case FPL, what else are you going to be, what are you replacing it with? So in my case it will be, I mean, to be fair, I'm not actually addicted to FPL content or whatever. I am actually quite strong when it comes to addictions. It's like with sweets, it's Steve-O, you eating sweets, number one, it fucks up your eczema. Number two, it fucks up your teeth. Number three, it's just not good for your full stop because of the sugar. What are you doing eating all these Haribos and jelly beans for? Just fucking stop. So I just go, right, stop. And I don't think I've eaten a bag of sweets. Like, I always use Pepper Pigs or whatever it's fucking Percy Pigs as a prime example.
Yeah.
Because it's normally a tradition of mine. Whenever I go back home, I'll always go to the Marks and Spencers, always go to Burger King, and I always buy Percy Pigs. But when I last went down to Torbay, which was 3 months ago now, 2.5, 3 months ago now, there was and here's the word, boundary in place, which was you can now buy Percy Pigs 2 for £3.50. I'm thinking, you have now put the price up by £1.50. It used to be buy 2 packs for £2, and now in the space of however many months, you've now put it up by £1.50. You can go fuck yourself. And I'm just like, actually, Stephen, you don't need to eat these sweets. And since then, I have not had a bag of sweets for about 3 months, which for me is very, very strong. I still have had sweets in the sense of chocolate and everything, but ironically, that doesn't have a negative effect on my eczema, for argument's sake. But anyway, the point I'm trying to get at is that when it comes to addictions and things that are having a negative impact in my life, I'm quite strong. I just go stop. So with X, I always make the point that I just I mute every single account to do with FPL. When it comes to content, I just unsubscribe to X, Y, and Z channels. Don't get me wrong, I'm still, because I'm not going to lie, they are friends of the show. I'm still not that they're going to give a flying fuck that one subscriber in Steve-O has unsubscribed because they got so many, but I'm still subscribed to, out of respect to them, Andy Let's Talk FPL and Harry. I'm still subscribed to Planet FPL on my podcast feed. But to be honest, I'm never ever going to... Oh, and Black Box is another one. I'm never ever going to consume their content unless I really want to. So for argument's sake, I was thinking about this yesterday, funny enough. I personally cannot wait for, and it's every year now, it's a tradition for a lot of people in the FPL community, listening into Planet FPL's club by club review. And that's just a must for me. But when it comes to any other of their content, I'm not going to listen to it. Because, again, like we've discussed with our personalities, we're just going to be swayed by what they're saying and what they're thinking, and then it just feeds into your mind. Whereas if I just don't listen to it, I'm not going to know. And it's the same with accounts on X. Because I'm muted pretty much every single account to do with FPL. And it does, I'm not going to lie, it does pain me that I've done this, because occasionally they will post something that has nothing to do with FPL. But like you said, it's so rare. But you've done, like you've mentioned, you've done the clever thing of just muting words. So if, I'm just going to pluck a name out of the hat, Gianni Batiste. majority of his content, I can guarantee, is something to do with fantasy football. But there is the odd time here or there that he will put up a post about... The one post that sticks in my personal mind was about the fact that his family, I can't remember who, owns a fish and chip shop in Torquay, and I was thinking, I would have never have seen that if it wasn't for someone that I follow commenting on his post. And I was just like, and also Nick tagged me in the post as well. So I was like, oh, I wish I could have just seen that organically rather than having to be tagged in that post. But if I was to go out my way and actually maybe mute, like you said, the words FPL, game week, whatever, maybe I can actually unmute these accounts. And then when they do put something out there which has nothing to do with FPL, I'm actually able to interact with them instead.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, quite right with Gianni. 80% is FPL, but then the other 20% is other stuff which I enjoy. Like he'll put. He's a great reference and a really nice guy. I've met him a few times.
Yes. Yeah.
And he'll put something up about some Italy footballers, and I genuinely have, when I was younger, loved the old Channel 4 Italian football, Goal Lazio and all that kind of stuff with James Richardson. And, then I'll say, oh yeah, my favourite ever player to play in Serie A is Batistuta, who I actually loved as a footballer, especially when growing up, the way he played football. And then, so that's why I don't want to mute accounts, because they'll put stuff that I actually really enjoy. I'm genuinely interested in. And I'm a follower of multiple sports. Like I absolutely adore tennis. I love MMA, specifically UFC. Boxing I've always loved. I used to do it when I was younger. And WWE is something I like.
AEW.
Yeah, WWE. Yeah, sports entertainment.
Oh, forget that.
And basketball. Well, specifically the team I support, which is Golden State Warriors. So. They and to kind of transition into answering your question, there is so much for me to still fill my time with. That's not about bettering myself. I want to just watch something where I can go numb. I need that every day. I need an hour or two where I'm just like, look, I just want to watch something and I don't give a shit about it. And that can be regarding Arsenal, obviously, with boxing and stuff like that. But I don't have to use the trigger point on my mind where I need to think about how it affects, per se, my fantasy team. So there's more than enough to fill the time, Siva, because I've already been doing that for the last 6 weeks, or 2 months since the season's ended.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And it's kind of like round off this conversation, because I've really got to get going. It's mental. This is the problem when you have a conversation with a
fine. I'm fine. We got another 2 hours.
I don't.
Part 2.
Well, this is what I was going to say.
We'll do part 2.
It's going to be really, from my personal perspective, because obviously we have personal contact with one another. It's not just done via X or you kindly coming onto the Patreon. It's we have each other's numbers, so we voice message at least once a day. I am going to be interested to see where this goes in, let's say 8 weeks' time. So the game's launched. We're into August, end of August or whatever. It will be interesting, like a follow-up to this, whether you come on Elite. In fact, I'd rather have it on one of the streams with myself and Jason, to be frank. I think that would be,
perfect.
In Steve-O's words, fascinating. I think it'd be great for you to come on at some point and just be like, I'm still enjoying the content that you're doing for Elite FPL. I'm still enjoying the content that FPL Juice does. And it actually feels like I've got a weight off my shoulders that I know what you're talking about. I know where you're coming from, but I'm hearing it from now a football perspective. Because what's good with FPL Juice and Elite FPL is that, let's get real here, we're not talking about FPL in the sense of buying this player, buying that player. We're just talking in general about football. So I'd like to think that someone like you, well, in this case, you directly, will still consume the content that us are bringing you, because we're not directly saying about like bringing these particular assets. I'm sure that there will be points where yeah, I'm not really interested in about the update of the league or whatever, because you literally have no investment in that. But when it comes to other talking points of view, so yeah, it will be interesting, a follow up to this, Ray, in a few months' time.
I mean, Steve, you really again transitioned brilliantly to the next point I want to make. But before that, there's 2 subscriptions I have, and that is Elite FPL and FPL Juice, and it's not because of the FPL at all, actually. It's more of the individuals I genuinely like, all the individuals, specifically obviously the hosts in regards to yourself, Jason. Dan seems like a really likable guy. I mean, one time I'm on, and hopefully he's on as well, I'd like to understand the inception of how the 3 of you got together, because I actually never know. I don't know, because I've only really been consuming your content for what, like 8-9 months now, and obviously FPL Juice has been 3 years, so it's a very different dynamic. But the word you used, and I'm so happy you did, because I would have forgotten, weight off the shoulders, is absolutely massive. If we could round this off with a comment about what Ray feels, a summary of Ray making this decision, weight off the shoulders. I literally, after I broke the news, if you like, and you're right, no one cares, but I care because I just want to get it off my shoulders, is I felt so good. I felt so light on my feet. You know, I was telling you about some of the walks I've been doing. I think I completed it 2 minutes faster than the first time I did it, simply because I didn't have to think about how am I going to tell everyone. And in some aspects, disappoint some, because, you know, we have an invested interest where we try and release content. I'm not going to do that anymore. So, and a lot of people did reach out to me, especially with the, you know, with the audios I sent, the voice notes. I sent a lot of voice notes around, and a lot of people responded, touch wood. And I put out like a funny tweet, you know, with the Rock meme after that, behind the curtains, where he does that explaining picture. And I literally put, you know, and then I decided to not play FPL anymore. And like 2 or 3 people reached out, and they said, "Are you okay?" Everything like that. And I said, "Look, I was emotional, irrational, sensitive in January. Now I'm so calm. I'm so rational. I'm so logical, and I really feel at peace with this decision." And I think that's a great idea. At the end of August, to touch base again. I mean, I'll be watching the streams anyway. It's always hard to watch them live because, you know, I got shit I always got to do at home. But I always watch anyway. At the end is, you know, a rerun, and kind of like I think that's a great idea, that we touch base in a couple of months' time, or even in 6 weeks' time, or at the end of August when the game is proper at it, and say, "Ray, how you feeling? Do you have itchy fingers?" I do feel I'll get the itchy fingers.
Oh yeah, of course.
Then I need to make sure I sit on my hands. Yeah. I got to sit on my hands.
But this is the irony. Is that because who was I speaking to? Who the fuck was I speaking to? It must have been. It's got to have been Dan. It has to have been. Regarding, I can't go into detail because it's private, but there's a personal circumstance in his case where he's needed to essentially block someone out of his life, sorry, but only for certain periods of the day. And because this person has such a negative impact on his life, that he knows that at certain points of the day, this person will contact them. So he unfortunately has had to go to the extreme levels of having to block this person at these times so that he doesn't hear from them. So then he's not distracted by anything. So actually, his mindset is just purely focused on his business. So when it comes to you muting, blocking, whatever you've done to get away from the world of FPL, and the fact that you will be focusing on other options. Yes, will it be in the back of your mind that the game has launched? Well, I can guarantee you're going to find out somehow, because you're still going to be watching FPL Juice. You're still going to be in contact with Elite FPL. So you're going to know through the grapevine no matter what. And I can guarantee, like with an alcoholic who's been sober for 3 months, and then after he's been avoiding pubs and clubs for the past 3 months, he then walks past the pub. He's going to be shaking, as a fact. But once you get through that first time you walk past the pub and you realise, that was it. Nothing's going to happen. It's then it's the same with me when it comes to training. Once I actually it's only been over the last 3 or 4 months that I've realised, fucking hell, I don't need to be going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. I'm literally only going 2, 3 at most. The other 4 or 5 days, I'm doing exercise, but not like where I'm tearing my body to shreds. But I've realised what's going to happen, Steve, if you don't go to the gym or you don't do your press ups today. Guess what the answer is, Ray? Absolutely nothing. It's the same with Dan when it comes to this particular individual. I've said to him, what's going to happen if you don't answer the phone? Oh, absolutely nothing. Once you get over that, it's, oh yeah. And it'd be exactly the same for you with FPL. It's like, oh my God, the game's launched. And you're going to get those, like you said, those triggers. Like normally this time last year, I was doing all these threads. I was being part of these podcasts, part of these streams and everything. Once you kind of get over that and you kind of realise that because you're focusing on other things, you're going to forget about it all. And it's just going to be like, it'll be difficult. I'm not going to lie. It's not exactly going to be straightforward. Like, don't need to think about it. But I think once like you just mentioned, we get into like that 3rd or 4th week of the season, I'll be honest with you, Ray, I think you're gonna be like, actually, I'm just enjoying the Telegraph game, and that's it.
Agree.
And you're going to be enjoying the football that you want to consume rather than what you feel you have to consume.
Yes. Yeah. Perfectly put a bow on that gift.
Well, it's been 2 hours, Ray. It's been 2 hours.
Has it? Not 5 minutes.
It's been exactly 1 hour and 53 minutes as we're approaching it. So, just fucking mental, us recording this now. For any patrons that have got any feedback on this, please, as ever, write a comment below. Me and Dan, Ray, I have told Dan, I've specifically told him, and I've told Jason, I want you to address Ray's comment that you put but it feels like several months ago now, but several weeks ago, you put in some really interesting comments about content creating and self-employment and various other things. It was a really, really interesting thing to write, and I want Dan and Jason to answer that point. So at some point in the future, we will be getting to that. In fact, we may even do it tomorrow. I've already told Dan that I want to do his reaction to England, and whether it's tonight or tomorrow, I don't really care, but I want to get his reaction to it. But certainly, patrons, if you have anything to say about Ray quitting FPL or any other subject matters, your favourite TV shows, any subject matters you want us to address, just let us know in the comments. And as ever, I just appreciate anybody listening in, whether you have been a paying member since the start of this in January, or you've just come along for free. The fact that you're here listening to this is very grateful. Ray, as I always say to that, have you got any final words before I literally disconnect from Discord and get the fuck out of here?
Yeah, first of all, Stevo, I really appreciate your, obviously having me to kind of, if you like, tell my story and giving me the time to really delve deeper into the reasoning. So I think you've facilitated this wonderfully, as you always have. So first of all, I appreciate you obviously having me on, and kudos for the way you kind of gave me such a safe platform to just say whatever I wanted to. Second of all, I kind of only said this to Stevo about 5 days ago that, I want to do this, and the only person I could think of to do it with is Elite FPL and yourself specifically, just you. And, you opened it up for me, so it's been really, really enjoyable. Just going through certain aspects I didn't even think of, and obviously reverting it to life as well. And just thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to a part 2. Anytime you need me, just let me know, and really happy to jump on. So I appreciate it, and it's been a real pleasure being part of the Elite FPL family, if you like. And I just look forward to continuing watching this journey with you guys. So thank you.
Right, I'm going to now disconnect, and essentially I will continue talking to you tomorrow when it comes to me seeing Emma or Ashley or whatever crap goes on tomorrow by about 4 o'clock. I'm actually, in fact, talking of Steve-O, nothing's going to happen. I'm not going to lie. I'm only thinking about it now because I'm just bringing up the conversation, because it's something that me and you have in common when it comes to voice messaging, is talking women. And 4 o'clock tomorrow is going to be really, really interesting from the point of view that it's when I'm going to find out how Emma reacts towards me and how Ashley reacts towards me tomorrow. It's going to be very... because I'm there from 8 o'clock tomorrow. I'm starting early. So I'll probably see them quite early on in the day. So I'm going to be really interested to see how they react. If Emma reacts genuinely to me really positively like she has been over the last few weeks, I'm going to be like, right, I'm going to be giving her my number.
That's it.
I'm going to be giving her my number. Yeah. I'm not going to be like, can I have your number? I'm just, no, take my number. Take my number. Whereas with Ashley, it's going to be, has Emma said to her what I said to Emma about Ashley? It's going to be really, really interesting tomorrow, Ray.
Brilliant. All right, man. Can't wait for the voice note.
Ray, I'm disconnecting. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
And there we have it. There's Ray. And like I said, I'm not going to go over it. I mean, in London today, it's going to be pouring down. I was caught in it yesterday at work. Absolutely got drenched yesterday between the hours of 11 and 12:30. It was, in the words of my dad, bucketing it down. And I've got, in the next few minutes, I've got to go to Specsavers to tell them how I think about the contact lenses that they gave me. The simple answer is they're great. Just give me a bulk of box of what they are, and I've also got to pick up my new glasses as well. Anyway, let's get out of here. Cheers all, and see you whenever.